Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's inaugural podcast by Trends Research and Advisory. We're delighted to welcome our guest, Dr. Eesa Bastaki, His Excellency, President of the Dubai University and esteemed contributor to many areas of UAE public life across industry, advisory, and of course, education. We'll be discussing, broadly speaking, climate change today and its various facets, again, across renewable energy technologies, across education, energy transition, and some of the other thematics pertinent to the COP28 conference this year. Dr. Eesa, your career has been very long and very distinguished, and you've received numerous awards and have held numerous important positions in the government and outside the government education. Something that struck me in your experience is this ability or a desire to bridge the gap between and among different disciplines. So you studied engineering, a PhD from the University of California at Irvine, and subsequently entered government and displayed a range of different abilities in communication, administrative leadership, education, and so on. So my first question really is this by design or is it part of your nature?
Well, good morning to all of you, and thank you, Trends Research and Advisory. Actually, I'm very delighted to be a part of this podcast, and I think it's very important for me to explain exactly how did I reach until today. Well, it's both for me. It's design and nature. The reason is because even when they talk about intelligence, they talk about as a natural intelligence, which is instinct, and then the other one is the acquired intelligence. So I think for me, it's both. One of the big reasons of my successes in school, I was always first. I was never second. I don't believe in number two. In the university, it was the same until I graduated PhD. My example that inspired me is my beloved my father. He was a person who discussed with us everything in the culture, in sciences, in technology, olden technologies. He knew all of these. He was talking about poetry, and he was talking about Einstein's theory. He was talking about all this, like Darwin, like you can go on, all these, Thomas Edison, and so, and also Isaac Newton. So we grew up in that environment that induced the learning of actually sciences and literature and culture together. So we loved all these together. I was the best in Arabic, I was best in English, in science and mathematics and so on, because I was brought up in a place that I was learning before going to school. And anytime in the school, they had a topic the teacher was talking about, I knew it already, because I was discussing it. He was not only our mentor, but he was also a kind person, respected everybody, and he taught me something. He told me, and all of us actually, our siblings, we are 9, all of us. He told us, never lie in your life. That's number 1. Number 2, never say bad words. Number 3, never swear, because you are always telling the truth. Number 4, be kind to people. And the last, respect others. When I say respect others, it's all about everything. It's not just respecting as a person, as the ideologies and so on. So this way of we brought it in my life. I've never lied. I've never cussed anybody. I never talked bad words. And I always respect other people. This environment created in me the love of learning in a sense. Even I have a motto now, I'll talk about it, which is university, we have to have L to L, love to learn. So I love to learn. That's why I excelled so well, and I was an open book for others, because for me, whatever I have, I give it to others. So it was by nature as my father was very smart, even though he didn't have tools to become a scientist, he was also into learning. So there's nature and there is the other one, which is as we go, I am designed to become this way. And it's a proof for this is when I started, I was always teaching my fellow students in the schools. We were going under the flashlights of Dubai Airport in '76 to teach the students, my colleagues, my mates, so that they could pass in their exam of all subjects. And then when I went to university, I was also teaching my colleagues, my bachelor's, master's, and even PhD, I was helping them. So it became something that I loved to. When I came to University of UAE, or United Arab Emirates University, when they interviewed me to become a TA, or actually a TA, there was a rumor in the university that I have invented the calculator. So when I was interviewed, I said, first of all, I didn't invent it. It's a lab experiment, everybody does it. I don't know who got this idea. But when I was asked a question of solving a problem in mathematics, I was really very upset. I said, I can do it in 1 second. But let me ask you, when you asked me this, can you solve this problem? He couldn't. And I did it in 1 line, and then I solved this problem. So they realized that I'm here to be there and to work and to contribute to the university. So when I went to university to teach, I was already in second year. I was the head of section of research in technology and the research in energy. And then I was the associate dean for student affairs, females and males. Then I was the director of IT Center in University of UAE. And from there, I began to leave the university in a sense that as a secondment. So I was seconded by the university to Al Ain municipality to found the IT center. It took me 3 years, I founded it. And then, again, I was seconded to Dubai Silicon Oasis. I was one of the founders of Dubai Silicon Oasis for 5 years. So I went between, even though I'm an engineer, I went into IT, I went to managing, I went into Silicon Oasis, which is electronics, management, leadership. And then later I was seconded to ICT Fund. So I was the first employee of ICT Fund, and I created my own team, and then you know how successful they are. So it's funding, it's technologies. I'm also invited to be in any cultural events. I am there. And I was contributed a book called Wind Tower.
On the wind towers?
Yes, Wind Tower, and that's something very important. So all these experiences have built my capabilities of dealing with any circumstances. And any event I can always adapt to wherever I go. So I'm into languages, I'm into culture, I'm into sciences, into leadership, education, and technology, and so on. Even I am the chairman of the World Green Economy Organization, which was founded in Dubai, the headquarters in this platform of education, academia, and student and youth platform. So that's why I'm both. I was born of the father I had. That was the natural case, and then I designed my way as I came to here.
Well, that's a fascinating answer. It explains a lot, because you've put the theory into practice in the course of your career and continue to do so today. So you mentioned the university, and universities have a fundamental role in society, to prepare the youth, to take on the future responsibilities and develop their respective sectors, much in the way that you yourself have done. Now, I understand that the University of Dubai is something of a leader in the sector of climate change and sustainability before that. So could you walk us through some of the initiatives, some of the institutional aspects, institutional leadership of the university with regard to climate change?
You see, the first thing that we are owned by Dubai Chambers. And Dubai Chamber, the first thing they looked at to build our new campus, which was built in 2000. We started the kickoff in February 2014, and the building was ready 2015 in December, as I said earlier. And the main goal of Dubai Chamber was to have a university that is smart, in a sense that everything is automated in the university, and plus to make sure that it doesn't add any carbon footprint to the society.
And so this was back in 2000 and...
The design was started earlier, but 2015 was the kickoff of the project.
Got it.
So it was earlier, 2013 or 12, I think. So once we moved in a smart university, and plus we had a gold certificate from LEED. And so Dubai Chambers also, they were not a green building. And then they realized they need to do some kind of retrofitting to make it a green building. And they got the award of Emirates Energy Award for being a large organization, that can get the first prize in being green, since it wasn't green at all. Mm-hmm. And so then they said, our CSR is the corporate social responsibility, is the education that we have already started at the University of Dubai. Let's make it a green campus. We didn't have any campus. And
were you involved, Doctor? Just sorry. Were you involved in conceptualizing the campus as a smart and a green campus through the chamber, or did they ask you later?
Actually, I wasn't involved at all. Completely. When this launching started, I knew what we are doing. Right. So I didn't know before that. So they launched it, and then I realized that they're doing. From that day, I've become an advocate to this kind of a project. So it was enough for them to have a platinum certificate university of LEED, I'm saying, and also a smart, but they wanted also to make sure that the carbon footprint will be nil, will be zero.
Wow.
And they started a project in 2018, if I'm not sure. I can check my numbers, but they started in 2018. And actually they started 2016 feasibility study, and then in December 2018 project started, 20 November, and finished 2019, 15 November 2019. Mm-hmm. So here in 2019 we had a campus that was run 100% by solar farm, but we didn't get the LEED certificate until 2 years, which was 2020, or nearly 2.5 years, 2 years and a half, and that is that we got the certificate because they need to look at all these numbers, the measurements, and so on, to make sure that it is a net zero, even though it started in 2019. And it was proven. They gave us the LEED certificate for Net Zero Energy Campus. Now, the beauty of this kind of a project in the University of Dubai, we are very sensitive to carbon footprint, very sensitive. In a sense, I'll tell you now. Why University of Dubai was the second university in the world, I'm not talking second organization, universities, in the world that has net zero energy campus. So, carbon footprint is zero from university, speaking in terms of net carbon zero. So that's not all. We don't have any batteries. I said we are very sensitive to green economy and green environment and green society. We don't have any batteries. Oh. Then how can we run the university at night?
At night, right.
We have excess of energy generation, electricity generation. We feed it to the grid.
All right, it comes back at night.
So it comes back at night.
Okay.
In winter we have more even. Yeah. So we have a lot of, actually if you look at it, it's not net zero, it's net negative.
Yeah. You could sell it actually.
Yes, you can sell it. But because it's a Shams project of DIWA, it is a Shams project, which you put on roofs and other buildings to make it green, not 100%, but certain amount of of watts, the kilowatt, and maybe maximum 1 megawatt. So this is Shams project. And so we are connected to the grid. Anything we give it, they return it back. If it's extra, they keep it on themselves or they sell it for more price. We should thank them actually because they don't approve more than 1 megawatt. But for us, they did for nearly 2. So we produce 1.7 megawatt of energy in this 15,000 square meters.
That's a good size, yeah.
Yeah, 15,000 square meters of solar farm. And we have also parking covers 0.3 megawatt. So the total we produce is 2 megawatt. So that's one. We don't have any batteries. We are very sensitive, as I said, regarding being green and the waste of these kinds of batteries. Secondly, is we use dry cleaning to clean our solar panels, which is by robotics.
Right.
We
So
have
no
robots
water.
that they can, I think twice a week they go and clean it completely. It's there, sit there, and it moves it and so on, cleans it. So we are not using any water. We're saving, I don't know how much water, but it's amazing. We're saving like 34,000 liters of water per month.
34,000.
Liters
Wow.
per month.
That is a lot.
That's a lot. It's not enough now. Also, it's economically feasible. We were paying D1, the cost of electricity was 1.2 million dirhams per year. And the project cost us 6 million dirhams. So after 50 years,
Fast return.
there's return of investment. It means after 5 years, and the project is 30 years. So for 25 years, we have zero cost and we have zero carbon footprint. Actually, I could call it negative, but let's call it zero carbon footprint. This project is actually an example for others that they believe that's very costly. You have to look at the long run. Some projects could be 5 years, some 6 years, maximum 7 years. Let's say even 10 years. Still, you'll have 15 years of zero cost and zero carbon footprint. So I think I actually advise and urge other organizations to go with the solar panel project, which is Shams Dubai, that you can have actually part of it is free energy and part of it is your cost will return in 5 years to 7 years.
Yeah, it's a good investment apart from being sustainable. Is there any subsidy in the beginning, or do you have to pay everything? You have to pay the cost of the panels, the connection, and so on?
Yeah, the panels were paid 100% by Dubai Chambers.
Okay.
And then we pay them every year. So in 5 years,
Got it, yeah.
we also cover the cost, and then we will be free and so on.
Well, it's a great investment. I mean,
Yes.
that's the. I'm struck not only by the success of the solution ultimately, but also by the dates. You know, to decide to be net zero in 2012, that's relatively early. I mean, now after 2020, you know, many countries, many organizations have said, you know, we do commit to being net zero and we'll implement these plans and these projects. But 2012 was early to think about it. And then to implement it and be carbon neutral by 2015 is really something pretty great. Dr. Eesa, in the year of COP28, inevitably a spotlight has been shone on the region. I mean, Egypt first, COP27, and now the UAE in November, COP28 in Dubai. And so it inevitably brings to the table the question on the energy transition and the role of oil and gas producers in the energy transition. Now, yeah, without speaking for other Gulf states, but they're all quite similar, but the UAE has really committed to charging ahead with renewables, is doing a number of other policies and projects to support broader electrification of the economy, and so there's a lot of momentum. It's not just the climate summit, but it's the actual projects on the ground, the actual policies that are being implemented. It's very impressive from an external point of view. Now, in your opinion, Doctor, what is the main driver of all this activity, which is in a way counterintuitive, that, you know, oil and gas states should genuinely decarbonize electricity production and implement large-scale renewables and implement, you know, all kinds of things, including projects on hydrogen in the future. What's the main driver from your point of view?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. If you look at it carefully, we started our drive since 1989, actually, towards it.
What is that?
Yeah, it's when we ratified the Vienna Convention for the protection of the ozone layer. And then in 1995, we joined the UN Framework Convention, which is UNFCCC, and then ratified the Kyoto Protocol, and so on. So we had many things, but one of the main drives towards this started earlier, but it strongly started when His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the president of UAE, actually he said a famous sentence that I have memorized it and speak it everywhere. He said that if you invest correctly today, then after 50 years, we'll be celebrating when we export the last barrel of oil.
Oh, wow.
Now, this is a vision. The first vision is maybe in 50 years, the oil has been depleted, right? So if it depletes in 50 years, so still we'll be celebrating. What does that mean? Now we have a plan to reach there, to become sustainable, even though there is no oil, because we are celebrating when we export the last barrel of oil. And this doesn't mean depleting. Sometimes also there are competitors that can compete with oil. So this is the main drive towards working hard and looking at all those strategies in UAE, how to reach that goal, how to reach that 50 years from now, which was 2 years ago. So it's like 2071. So this is our main goal. So the leaders are aware of what's happening. They have gone through all this until we reach today, this year, that we are hosting COP28. And an oil-based economy country is hosting COP28. That's showing the world that we are up to the challenges. And we are working to make this happen. One of the reasons, that climate change is happening, and in Paris and COP25, it's nothing business as usual. So BAU should change now. It was asked that every country should go beyond the business as usual. That's the reason that one of those strategies of UAE in 2030 to become 50% renewable energy. And let me see the number exactly. Zero emissions in 2050. That's the goal of the COP25 plus the goal of UAE. And if you look at DEWA, they have also 2050 Dubai net zero emission strategy. So there we are working to make sure that the climate change will not affect. And I'll give you a simple example. In University of Dubai, we have a center called Center for Future Studies. And the future studies is scientific. We look at scenarios of the future and build from those small signal scenarios. And from there, we look at the scenario when it comes to being at the time. We already have the solution because we've seen that scenario, we worked on it. Let me give you a simple example. Let's say that the level of sea level will be up maybe 1 meter or near 2 meters.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. What will happen to the coastal areas of the Gulf, especially UAE? They will drown. So now we have to look at what is it that we need to do. First of all, we have to look at what we need to do so that doesn't happen. But suppose a scenario, it happens. Do you have a solution for it? Yes, there are solutions. And we, at University of Dubai, we have that solution working on it. But we don't want that. We have to be proactive. Proactive means you have to make sure that renewable energy is the main part of every endeavor in the world. When I say renewable energy is not only because people talk mainly about those utilities.
Mm-hmm.
Utilities are not the only sources of carbon footprint.
All right.
They are-
Off-grid.
The industries, transportation, you go on. So all of these contribute to this kind of global warming. So now what we are doing is electric cars in UAE. We are starting now to have policies that can run here. This will affect in the carbon footprint, transportation. In 3 years, we'll have in 2025 actually flying taxis in Dubai, and these taxis are all electrical taxis. So that we are trying to make sure that we reduce the carbon footprint.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, nobody will get rid of carbon because we needed carbon for our trees to be alive, right? But we have to neutralize it in a sense that it's okay for it is okay for the environment to be sustainable.
Right.
So yes, UAE is there, and if you look at all those dates, we participated in 2021, organized the UAE Regional Climate Dialogue. We participated in the Leaders Summit of the Climate, announced a bid to host COP28, and in 2023 we are going to host COP28. So now the main goal of all this is to make sure that the rise of the temperature doesn't go more than 1.5 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what this all it was about, all these, what do you call them, trends towards going towards a sustainable environment, sustainable economy, and sustainable society. So our leaders are here to make sure that this thing happens. And this is the reason why we are in the right track. Already DEWA in 2030 you're going to have 5 gigawatt of solar energy. That's for utility-wise speaking. It's costing 50 billion dirhams. And in 2050 there's a net zero emission strategy. Abu Dhabi has the same strategy. And His Excellency Dr. Sultan Jaber has been chosen to be heading the COP28, and the only one reason is to prove to the world that the CEO of ADNOC, which is oil company, is working hard to make sure even ADNOC is going to be green in a sense in the future.
Mm.
So there's a plan even in ADNOC to do it. That doesn't mean we're going to get rid of oil. No way. The world will never be without oil or gas. If we're talking fossil fuels. But maybe it will decrease. That's it.
Mm.
So yes, even though we are an oil-dependent economic country, still we are giving the CEO of ADNOC to make this happen and prove to the world that we are working in the right direction.
Well, that's that's very well articulated, very well put, Dr. Eesa. You're completely right. The shift beyond renewables and pure utility scale projects into transport, into the use of other fuels in the economy, into storage through batteries or hydrogen fuels, which, as you know, can be used in industry and transport and all kinds of things, is really what I think the energy transition is all about. In other countries, in Europe, for example, or in the West, the process of the energy transition is being led by the private sector. The government incentivizes the private sector through usually investment laws and subsidies and so on, and they do this, quite openly. There's national legislation in the US, there's national legislation in the EU, and the intention is to incentivize the private sector to transform the economy into a climate economy. Now, of course, the political economy of energy is different in the GCC countries and oil-producing countries. But how do you think, and especially with your background in the Chamber of Commerce, what are the best ways to get the private sector involved in climate change and specifically in the energy transition and electrification?
That's a very difficult and a very easy at the same time.
We'll have the easy
it's a
part.
paradox now. Well, private sector has a big role in it. If you look at it, let's look at the carbon footprint of the world. You know, in Germany, once there was the COVID-19, there was a big problem of energy, right? And slowly the oil went up, the prices. They said, let's go back to coal. This means that once you are in trouble, you will go with fossil fuel,
Right.
which is not accepted anywhere, especially Western countries. So sometimes you need to make sure that if you go to the fossil fuel, is because that's the only solution. And we are here not to go to a solution. And the ones that actually, I can't say build, maybe destroy, but build the destruction of the environment through industries. So that means the private sector is the main cause of these kind of climate changes that's affecting the world in terms of stability of society, economy, and environment. So if they don't have, if they're not a part of this drive, we can never succeed. And the only thing to do it is, if you look at World Green Economy Organization, we have 7 platforms. One is, which I'm the chair, is academia and youth platform. But there is also one which is called, it's the private sector platform. And one, financial institutions. Now we're looking at 2 things. First of all, the private sector will be a part of World Green Economy Organization that drive towards accessibility of the environment and other things. If they are not part of it, we will never be successful. And UAE has started with that. We started with looking at the private sector and saying that you are a part of that problem. I consider the main part of the problem. If you don't contribute, one day you will not be sustainable. And why did they start the drive for employing Emiratis in the private sector? To tell the private sector, you're a part of this community, part of this country. You have to contribute to this, and it's coming for you to take care of the environment. It's one by one. That's why the World Green Economy Organization was established in 2016. And the main reason is to look at the economic sustainability, because that's the main thing. Under it goes everything else. And all those who are part of it, the states are part of it, the private sector is part of it, the financial institutions are part of it, and the United Nations organizations, they're all a part of this drive. So without the private sector and without the financial institutions, they need to pitch in. After 50 years, if we are not doing it right, actually talk about 100 years, that will be 1.5 degree more than what expected. So if that happens, it'll be a chaos, it'll be a disaster in the world. Already we are seeing the heat in this year, it's happening. This is a part of that catastrophe that could happen soon. People are the science are expecting 100 years. The way we're seeing it, it would go to 50 years actually. So if they are not involved, it will go even less than 50 years. And they should know that they are stakeholders of the climate change. And they need to work on it. So we hope, and the world should make sure that the private sector, which is the main source of the pollutions and other things happening, they should need to work with that. Plus, of course, financial institutions, they have to, because you need some investments. And they work together. And believe me, a private sector can sell a green product that's a part of their contribution, a green product to the organizations that, first of all, they'll sell their product. Secondly, they'll help the sustainability of the world. So now they're working on that, either to produce green products or to capture the carbon in the air, or the last thing I call it, which I am much for it, is energy harvesting.
Energy harvesting?
Yes.
What is that?
Well, energy harvesting is you harvest the energy that's dissipated. As an example, a train is moving and they're using whatever source of energy, but they are wasting the mechanical.
Of course.
So if you harvest the mechanical into putting it into energy, that's energy harvesting.
So energy efficiency in a way.
It's more than efficiency. Efficiency is producing efficiently, but now it helps the efficiency. But also you are trying to see anything that's dissipated to bring it back, to harvest it. Like magnetic waves. There are millions of electromagnetic waves in this volume. If you can actually do it in a way to put it in one energy and produce energy, you have harvested that energy. Heat energy, mechanical energy, all these that are wasted, you can harvest it. So this is the future, is to harvest whatever. You're walking on a street, if you have some special devices, they can actually produce energy as you walk. Heat, anything. So in this sense, either recycling or harvesting.
Interesting. And so, I mean, you mentioned about the walking and so on. I understand the concept, but practically speaking, what are the applications if they've progressed beyond the concept stage? How are we going to do this?
As an example, we look at a train. A train produces a lot of energy in mechanical
heat,
energy.
right? And also
Heat and all of this. Heat is part of it. Mechanical, the movement. If it's moving, remember the old cycles. We had the bicycles. We had that dynamo.
Right.
It's using the
for the lights,
mechanical and right.
The light. Yeah.
Exactly this. So you take the mechanical energy that's been dissipated and use it as an energy source. So you can. So there are some are very weak, especially electromagnetic. They are like microwatts, but if you put them together, all of it would go to 100 watts or 200 watts, whatever. So all these together, energy harvesting is the future of sustainability in the environment and economy and society.
Very interesting. We'll have to start a research program on that as well, right? Because we're always interested in new technology. Everybody's looking at hydrogen, but as you said, that's very much government scale, hundreds of billions of dollars in some cases. So then there's always scope for the kind of off-grid, economy-wide technologies. So we'd be interested in looking at that.
And there are so many problems with that, but the hydrogen actually energy, but still that's why it's not mature yet. Yes.
Yes, no, well, it's not mature. It's a big bet.
Yes.
It's a big bet being made around the world. I mean, obviously, in the case of the GCC, there are advantages there because the cheap cost of solar energy makes it feasible, commercially feasible, to electrolyze water, and then you get hydrogen like that. Yes. So that is, but I agree. I mean, it's very much a bet at this stage. We hope it works. Just shifting the emphasis of the conversation from technology, and this is maybe counterintuitive, right? When we look at the energy transition, climate change, and so on, many of the solutions, rightly, the ones that we've been discussing over the past few minutes, are technological solutions and scientific solutions. But I was wondering, I mean, given your position as a leader in education, what is the role of the humanities in climate change? Now, we've seen something new with the energy transition, the calls for a just energy transition. Some notions of social justice, of ethics, and so on are being brought into the picture to ensure that communities are also protected from the changes. And we saw this with the coal community in many countries, including in the UK and Wales. The entire community was essentially dispossessed as a result of the change and not using coal anymore as a source of energy. So we're beginning to see that in the discourse, and to me, it's quite a clear indication that there is space for the humanities and non-technological, non-scientific voices to be heard. But what's your perspective on it, given that you are in the education sector, Doctor?
Well, technology is the main driver. We can't deny that. It is You see, a simple example. You go into a house, one of the houses, okay? And we are using the best electricity things to use efficiently, well, and so on. But if I go out of my room and I don't close that switch, so even though I am using the best switch or the best bulb or the best whatever, but my acts are not as per my technology is done. So that's the reason why University of Dubai, we got the LEED certificate gold at the beginning, but then they had to look for 2 years the habits and the actions towards it.
Right.
And that's what we got the platinum later. So human being is the main part of this drive, of this project towards sustainability for the coming years, for many years to come. And if you don't involve them, we have to change the culture of people in order to use this kind of energy sources. So we need to go to every household and actually change the culture of way we deal with this kind of electrical power. If you don't do that, we will be losing a lot, even though we have efficient technology, any kind of devices, whatever we have, solutions. This is not enough. It helps. You see, when it turn off, maybe that turn off will save more energy than becoming efficient. So that's the reason human beings are very important. At the end, why are we serving?
Right.
Or whom are we serving? We are serving people. If you look at food, we produce it for people. Education, for people. Government services, for people. Industry, whatever they produce, the products of the people. Therefore, our goal is the people, the human being. What is it? We want to make sure the human being lives well even after 1,000 years. Lives well has a lot of equations in it. And one of the equations is the human being himself or herself.
The behaviors.
Yes. We have to look at the behaviors of dealing with these things. But at the end, we need to look at the culture. And that's what we had some of the activities in World Green Economic Organization. We went around the world. We went to Spain, to Bahrain, UAE, to give workshops to the people who will understand what are the impacts of not understanding the energy consumed in our households or anywhere or in the organization. So we try to educate them that you need to know what are the consequences. So to change the culture, you need a lot of marketing. Marketing is very important through social media, to whatever, that you need to survive, or you need your children to survive, or grandchildren to survive. After 100 years, from now on, you have to work on it. And the working on it is not to only work on something that is doing it, but your behavior towards all these things, your habits, everything should be part of the drive towards sustainable world. So yes, if you don't deal with the human beings, for them to be responsible, I don't think we'll achieve much.
Doctor, you must have heard the saying, it's much easier to change a nation's laws than its culture.
Yes.
Right? Culture is hard to change. Right? But I agree that it starts with behavior, starts with education and awareness, and certainly when we hear the desktop exercise of saying, well, look, this is the trend for temperature in 100 years. It's your grandchildren will have a difficult time with the temperature and all that, and we combine that with what we're seeing today on the news. You mentioned the summer of 2023 and the fires everywhere and all the other problems. So that has a real impact on the imagination and also on behaviors. So thanks for setting out that factor so clearly. How about, and this is something that emerges in the region and in the UAE, and you mentioned it, the vision. How about the role of leadership? The role of leadership in terms of the climate economy, climate change, and so on. We've seen the very high level leadership, the governmental leadership for COP28. We've seen the the massive projects, and so that's another form of investment, commercial leadership. But what about other forms of leadership, the importance of leadership in climate change?
Well, leadership, there are levels. If you can go from the highest level, which are the leaders of countries or leaders of cities, there are leaders of organizations, and so on. You can go on, different levels. All of these levels should be educated enough so that we can deal with this kind of climate change. And in UAE, if you look at the late Sheikh Zayed, the founder of UAE, with Sheikh Rashid, may they rest in peace, Sheikh Zayed said one thing. He said, the wealth of a nation is not the money, but it's the people. And he said also, I don't want to build in factories. I want to build human beings that build the factories. So in a sense, human beings are the main part of it. And the leaders are working towards that. If your goal as a leader to make sure that the human beings are living well in a society which is sustainable, which is nearly crime-free, which is very tolerant, all these good cultures of a human being, inclusiveness, all these together, if you want to create that, you need many other things to do. And one of them is the climate change. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, when he decided to have COP28 here, it wasn't a decision just because he loved to have it. It was a decision to make sure that the world will know that UAE is committed 100% towards greening the world, towards making the world a sustainable place to live. And the commitment is there. Every project that has come was approved by either His Highness Sheikh Mohammed Zayed or His Highness Sheikh Mohammed Rashid. The WGU, which is in Dubai, was approved and actually by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed Rashid. He actually started this project. So now we have the whole organization here to look at the sustainability in society, in environment, and in economy. Three elements are very important. If you don't take care of these three elements, no way will the world be sustainable. So our leaders, they know it, they understand it, they're educated, and they are trying to support anything that's necessary to make sure that we go according to the requirements of the world to become sustainable. Mm-hmm. So if leadership, and the reason why UAE is successful in many areas, either first or second or third in many areas, is because the leadership is always there. Sometimes I feel bad about our leaders that we find them every day they're somewhere. I just think, when do they rest?
Right.
When do they rest? It's a big burden, but they are committed. And they are committed. Once a leader is committed, there are two ways of commitment, for the good and for the bad. Our leaders are committed for the good. The Mohammed bin Rashid Global Initiatives. This is one of the best initiatives ever in the world. What this initiative do? They're building schools in poor areas, more than 3,000, 4,000 schools they've built. They're building hospitals. They are even training the teachers, giving them books for all the schools, plus helping them to become sustainable by funding the entrepreneurs there. So they look at the whole, it's not only UAE, it's other poor countries. They want to make sure that those societies are sustainable economically by helping them. So if they're doing outside, what about inside? If these intentions are towards the betterment of humanity, you will succeed. And they set example around the world that you be a humanistic leader is not a negative thing. It's 100% positive, and the achievements show that humanistic leadership is the main component of becoming successful.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what our leaders are doing. So we leaders are completely contributing in every endeavor and every project we have to make sure that we are sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not worried about our leaders, but we look at the other leaders also should actually mimic what we are doing in this part of the country. And believe me, most of the countries that are not stable is because of the leadership.
Right. Well, certainly the leadership is very consistent here. I mean, they're very, very consistent, and they have been consistent for a long time. So that's how you get the great results over time. Dr. Eesa, it's been a wonderful, enriching conversation, and thank you for your insights. I think we'll leave with a final question. It's a little bit difficult because I'll ask you to pick one factor, but the theme of this conversation has been climate change and all the good things that are being done, hopefully to take the world towards a better scenario of lower temperatures and so on in the future. If you had to pick one factor, just one, I know it's a terrible question to say, pick one, because there are always many, but if you have to prioritize one single factor that will underpin the success of the global shift towards a sustainable future, which factor would you pick among the ones that we've discussed today?
That's a question that needs to think about it. At least I need 1 hour to think about it because I have many, not one. And I'll tell you one, but I'll tell the others also. Always the first, I'm 100% convinced that the first equation towards the success of our endeavors in the world or drive towards sustainability is the leadership. That's number one without any doubt. They are the ones who rise and fall. They are the reason for rise and fall of nations. So leadership is always number one. But let's put aside the leadership. People will not agree with me, maybe, because there are other impacts, but I think technology will be the blessings of the future towards green economy. Mm-hmm. And without technology, I don't think we will survive in the coming 100 years. So, technology, then technology, then technology. I know we talk about culture, you talk about other things, right. But without technology, no way, because the industrial sector has been really very difficult and being very unethical, I can say, because they're really affecting the world's environment in the climate change sense.
Traditional industries, yeah.
So technology will solve most of the problems, not all. So for me, the one we want to take is technology is a solution for the future sustainable world. And I know people will not agree with me, but without it, it will not happen.
Well, we think it's a great answer, Doctor, because of course, without technology, how is it going to work? Well, with that, it's been marvelous having you on today's podcast, the inaugural podcast. I think that we've set the tone, and it's always important how we begin. Yeah. So we've set the tone for our next guests. They're going to have an elevated standard to live up to, and we believe and we hope that they will. In the meantime, Dr. Eesa, thank you for your time, and we're happy to welcome you back anytime it trends, maybe not on this podcast, but that we have many events. Yes. So we'd love to see you soon in the future.
Thank you very much, yourself specifically, and the Trend Research and Advisory. I think this is a good initiative because you need to get to set the tone. And maybe now you know the pros and cons. We all know of this first podcast, but I think it's a good trend. And as your name says, trends, it's a good trend toward a nice success, because we need to educate the society of what are the trends of the future. And your name says that. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Wonderful having you on board.